What's up, guys? This episode of the podcast is brought to you by HD Muscle. HD Muscle is more than a supplement company. They are a team of like-minded individuals who have come together to create a truly superior product line with zero compromises. In order to create the world's most premium supplement brand that is synonymous with today's top-level bodybuilders, athletes, and rising stars, HD Muscle had to step outside the normal parameters and practices of the industry. No limitations are placed on research or innovation when creating their superior product line. HD Muscle works with the most talented formulators and experts in the industry who share their core values, beliefs, and vision to create a line of products that can truly help you to push yourself past your limits and achieve your true potential. HD Muscle refuses to cut corners or limit their creativity based on monetary restrictions. HD Muscle will never sacrifice results for profit or promote an inadequate product. Integrity is everything. For free shipping right now on orders over $99, head over to www.hdmuscle.com and use the discount code HELLRUNE at the checkout. To stay updated on the latest news and releases from HD Muscle, follow at hd.muscle on Instagram. This episode is also brought to you by Stay Classy Meats to help make it easier and more affordable to gain access to high-quality meats direct to your door. Stay Classy Meats are a small batch supplier of high-quality meats from Montana. They have a strong inventory and are committed to quickly turning orders around to keep your freezer stocked. Stay Classy Meats have adjusted internal operations to serve you more efficiently during this difficult time. This means packing orders daily and shipping out on Mondays and Tuesdays. I'm proud to stand behind this company and offer a viable alternative to ravaged grocery stores and huge lineups. Head on over to www.stayclassymeats.com and use the discount code HELLRUNE at the checkout to save 10% off your entire order. Stay healthy, stay safe. My guest today is the President of Kifaru International Extreme Hunting Products, host of the Kifaru Podcast, and one of the most successful recurve bow hunters on the planet. Give it up for Aron Snyder. Three, two, one. Aron Snyder, thanks for coming on the podcast, brother.
Thanks. Appreciate you having me on. Sorry about the technical difficulties in the beginning there.
It's all good. Yeah, we're just talking before this because I'm an amateur at this. This is, I think, only like episode 7 or something like that. So I'm still trying to figure out what works. And I usually assume if something's going wrong, it's because I fucked it up. So. Yeah, you just got back from the Total Archery Challenge, right?
Yeah, the one here in Colorado.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, how was that? That looked like a ton of fun. I've been following all that stuff on Instagram, and it looks like an absolute blast.
Yeah, it's good. You know, we're lucky enough. We're a sponsor. They let us up on the hill early to beat the crowds a little bit, but for most people that haven't been to one, you're going to lose a lot of arrows. They're very, not just long distance shot, very tactical shots, a lot of trees. You'll find 60, 70 arrows in one tree in front of a target, so it's an eye opener for some people. But I shot my compound on Friday and then my stick bow on Saturday. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I've been looking at some of the stuff, and even some of Dudley's stuff. I've been watching him set up a course because he's, I think, been doing the whole tour. Because I think they you're at the one in Colorado, and then I think there's one in Montana and one in Utah as well. And I'm brand new to archery basically. Like I just got my first bow about 2 months ago. I was actually lucky enough. Like I had shown a keen interest in it, and one of my best friends from high school actually gifted me my first bow. So that was pretty awesome. And it's crazy when I'm watching these super long shots, like 110 yards, 120 yards, with like tiny little beaver decoy or something like that, like sitting between two trees. And from just the last 2 months of shooting, I've improved a lot, but just to get comfortable at 20 or 30 yards, the amount of work and practice that's taken me has been pretty eye-opening when I go and I see people that are out there, hitting perfect X's on this crazy course.
Yeah, it's an eye opener for a lot of people, and not just shooting, but physically. They were making a few comments about guys showing up in Wranglers and cowboy boots and a solid 3 bills and have to get carted off the course. It is on the side of a ski slope, so there is a bit of even though the chair takes you up, you do need to be able to get your fat ass around the mountain, and so they have to cart people off the mountain occasionally. So.
They're doing rescues on a practice course. Yeah, that's crazy. So is it open to everyone, or is it kind of like private invite, or what's the kind of deal with all that?
It's open to everyone, but they sell out so fast that you do have to reserve a spot now, because I think there was 1,800 people at the Colorado one, and then I think there's 2,500 or 2,800 people at the Utah, kind of the original Total Archery Challenge right there at I guess right. It's
so that was the first one then. The first one was in Utah.
Yeah, and there's a history behind it. There was a hunting film back in the day, a long time ago, called Full Moon Production. It was Anthony Dixon and Sean Monson, some others, and they were launching arrows at deer, and a lot of controversy at this hunting video. And Anthony Dixon and a few others started Snowcast at the Bird, which was the Total Archery Challenge kind of back then, and then Sean DeGray has it now, but they had the first one where it was just crazy long distance, cliff shots or whatever, and now there's 7 or 9 of them. We're a sponsor, but I don't go to all of them. I have somebody else that does it, but we have a booth, and I think they're Pennsylvania, North Dakota, maybe Tennessee, and then I can't remember. They're all over the place. So.
Yeah, it's crazy too when you look at those old hunting videos, even ones from like the 90s and 10 years ago. Like a lot of them have come a long way. A lot of them still are kind of like questionable when you watch them, but yeah, it's crazy to think, like, because I've been just kind of nerding out so hard. I've gone down the rabbit hole big time over the last couple months with just my interest in archery and getting familiar with some of the ins and outs of hunting and stuff like that. And I've been looking at all these old photos of these old compound bows that these guys are shooting. And it's crazy to think that they could hit those distances with this like primitive technology and these like old kind of plastic parts, and create just the original kind of compound bows that first came out are just not even close to what they have today.
And, this video I'm talking about, it wasn't, it was early 2000s. So they had Badlands packs. They all wore, Oakley glasses and like tennis shoes with gaiters. They got that fad going, and but they were launching arrows at a long distance. In fact, the first video, I don't know that they hit one in the lungs. They found them all on the video, but it was just one of those deals where slider sights weren't talked about back then, where you've got like a multi-pin slider for long distance. And when it first came out, I was like, I thought the video was cool, but I was like, they're going to catch some heat for that one. And they did. But yeah, now I think that's where the Total Archery Challenge originated from, was the Snowcast at the Bird is what it was called.
Right. So yeah, I guess for people that may not know who you are or really have too much of an interest in archery yet, maybe when you say that you have you guys were a sponsor there, you're talking about obviously your backpack company, Kifaru. So Kifaru. Maybe for the folks who don't know about Kifaru, or you could tell them a little bit about what you guys do and what you're doing at the Total Archery Challenge and how you're kind of helping backcountry hunters.
Gotcha. Well, Kifaru International was started, the guy who, I just purchased Kifaru with my business partner. Actually, it's actually going through next week, but the owner and longtime owner was Patrick Smith. He owned Mountain Smith backpacks before Kifaru. That's my kind of a mountaineering pack company. He sold it and he started Kifaru. I started there 9 years ago. And what we do is basically all American made, American component, needle, thread, buttons, zippers, everything's made in America. Custom fit backpacks. When I say custom fit, we take your body profile, height, weights for the shoulder strap length, belt size. We cater in mostly to backpack hunting, but we do day packs, everyday carry packs, things like that. We do sleeping bags, all kinds of stuff. But we're basically one of the last ones that are 100% made in America with American components. Mm-hmm. And again, we really cater to comfort and heavyweight hauling, long excursions or expedition type trips, things like that.
Yeah, because some of the trips that you've talked about are just sound crazy. Like I don't think that a lot of people understand what it feels like to pack 100-pound, 150-pound pack for a week, 2 weeks through the mountains. Like, I think about that. I was thinking about that because I've kind of gone through and watched some of your old videos and stuff like that. And like, I know people that I struggle just to get out for like a 45-minute hike with me sometimes. And it's like, they're grateful to finish the day without any water in their pack because their legs are already killing them by the time they're getting back down. And we've only gone 2K. So yeah, it's just, it's crazy what you guys do. And it's cool that you've catered to, I guess, the more extreme athletes and extreme hunters that are kind of really going above and beyond, right? Like your company really seems like it's geared towards guys who are hardcore outdoorsmen.
Yeah, it is, and it's unique because I'm encouraged to stay in the wilderness 150 nights a year. Before I took over the company, Mayor meaning the ownership, obviously. Patrick, he's definitely a guy that wants you out there testing and using the product and perfecting it by hard use, not just nothing wrong with whitetail hunting or different styles of hunting, but true wilderness backpack hunting, living off your back. And generally, so things aren't blown too out of proportion. You go in there for a 14-day trip, you're at 65 to 70 pounds, and you're coming out with as much as you can physically handle, which in my case is pushing 150 usually. And so it's a different, you talk to fast packers that do 30 pounds for, a 10-day trip, they're going super lightweight. What we do is you have to be comfortable. Sleep deprivation is not really an option for that many days. Food deprivation, and you need to do multiple stalks. So people don't understand on a mule deer hunt, you may do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mile long stalks in a day, gaining and losing each day 2, 3 to 5, 6,000 feet. Mm-hmm. You may have, gained 2,000 to 4,000 feet to get there. It could be 3, 5, 7, 10, 12 miles in. Lightning, weather, again, like I talked about, sleep, food. There's a lot of issues and a lot, you become desensitized to it, where now for me, it's like, going to the movie theater. But, initially there's going to be a lot of people turn around early and come back early. And a lot of people just aren't used to being alone for 10 to 14 days either. That's another big problem. And if you've never been alone for that long, you're probably not inherently good at it out of the gate. Most people aren't genetically made for that.
Especially out and alone in the woods, it's like when you spend that much time in the woods, you encounter so much crazy stuff. Like you're talking about just crazy weather patterns. Like that's something that you have absolutely no control over. You always hear about people that'll go out for, a day hike at the local ski resort and, they're getting injured. But imagine the risk associated with now you've got this insane amount of weight. You're way out there in the backcountry, right? Sometimes you're not even, you're not even within cell phone range or whatever, or contact with other people, and then you're kind of in these crazy environments. But I want to talk more about that, but I kind of wanted to give people a little bit more context about you specifically, because I always seem to kind of bring on these guys that kind of have this backstory, right, where they're coming from kind of humble beginnings, and I really seem to like that story. And from the sounds of it, you grew up. Where did you grow up? Somewhere in Oregon, or?
Yeah, Detroit, Lake Oregon. It's a couple hundred people.
Right. Yeah. And you know, I hear you talk about kind of where you're coming from. Like it sounds like you didn't start out with a lot. You know, you started out really young, getting out into the woods, spending a lot of time in the woods, working early. So maybe you can kind of take us back to the beginning a little bit, because it's pretty crazy when you talk about where you came from and now you're running this successful business. You know, you were just on the Joe Rogan podcast, which to everyone is kind of like, okay, that's the marker. Like, I've made it now. So maybe you can kind of take us a little bit from the beginning and how you ended up doing all this cool stuff.
Yeah, it's a crazy story. In fact, I was I called my English teacher in high school and grade school a little bit ago just to say hey and check up on her. And she was making jokes about I barely made it through school. But yeah, from Detroit Lake, Oregon, and couple hundred. It's a logging community for the most part. It's not too far off the Pacific Crest Trail. You know, and I was a bit of a peckerhead as a kid. I worked hard, but didn't do real well in school. But I was lucky enough, you know, being in the outdoors and in the wilderness and hiking into lakes, fishing into the wilderness at a young age. And then I worked on a trail crew team, which really is what got me into backpack hunting. What a trail crew team is the local trails in the wilderness and national forest. There's a team of 3, 5, 6 people, and you carry crosscut saws and axes, and you clean off where blow down timber falls in the trail. You clean that off for all the hikers coming through. So, you know, at 14 years old, I was running, you know, chainsaws and crosscut saws. Yeah, that's I did it every summer.
That's crazy, because now, like, you see young kids. It's like, I look at 14 years old, and I'm like, that is a child, and you know, you're doing like hard backbreaking labor out in the woods all day, which is crazy.
Yeah, my daughter asked me at one point, she's 19 now, and you know, Dad, did you work when you were my age? And I was like, Kaylee, I was running a chainsaw when I was your age, a power saw. Yeah, you know, because we didn't have we just had a fireplace for, you know, we only had firewood for heating, and so you split firewood all summer long. Wow. You know, and then we didn't have that much money, so we picked like mushrooms, split firewood, mowed lawns, weed whacked. You know, oh,
you're back.
I got a phone call. Sorry about that. You know, things like that for school clothes, for money. You know, at the time I probably was, you know, hating on that a little bit, but it certainly, you know, made me tougher, made me appreciate what I have, which probably, you know, long-term, you know, after that I joined the Army. I was in the Army for a few years, and then I got out and I worked construction. And so when you know, now it takes a lot for me to have a real bad day, because I always look at what could be going on. Could be swinging a hammer, you know, packing steel upstairs. Obviously in the military, you're doing all kinds of crazy crap and generally nothing fun. And during all that, I've always been, even though I sucked at school and I do get irritated at people, I love helping people online, but you know, everybody wants to hit that easy button. Mm-hmm. And now, you know, back then there was no Google, right? I actually had to go out and learn it. And now you can at least get halfway through just from Google and then go out and finish off figure it out after that yourself.
Totally. So many resources for people now. Oh
yeah, it's insane. Some resources probably aren't that good, but some of them are really good. And so, you know, learning what I learned in my youth in the trail crew team, and then obviously in the Army, I learned a lot about land navigation, how to just get the shit kicked out of yourself and sustain yourself, survival. And then when I got divorced, well, I should probably know that date, but I had kind of decided at that point, you know, I'm just going to focus on spending as much time in the wilderness as I can. Mm-hmm. And I, you know, the more you go out and do something, put yourself in different situations, the more you learn, to where now it, you know, if they were like, if you could tell me, hey, we got to go on a 10-day backpack trip tomorrow, and I get my pack packed in, you know, 30, 40 minutes and I'm always physically ready, mentally is easy, you know, because
you're always prepared for it, right?
Yeah.
Not doing this, because it's that's one of the things that really, really attracted it to me. You know, I initially started getting interested in archery. You know, mainly I started watching Cam Hanes stuff, and my old perceptions of hunting. You know, I'd always kind of had a little bit of an interest in it just because my family were hunters on my mom's side, but they all live in Winnipeg, so I didn't really grow up around it. But I loved that I was seeing this kind of subculture with a particular group of hunters where they were asking a lot more of you, and that style of hunting was asking a lot more of people, so you had to be an athlete. And at least that's already kind of part of my lifestyle. And I was, you know, I played sports growing up, and but I got a bunch of concussions, and basically I couldn't play rugby anymore, couldn't do these other things anymore. So it's been really cool to aspire to be able to have a new sport where I have something I'm training for versus just training for the sake of training, right? You know?
Yeah, and I've done a lot of different sports, and very few sports do you have to worry about getting a bear eating you or your food, or falling off a cliff and lightning, and then actually taking an animal down, learning archery, right? Learning how to tune your bow and all that stuff, and having the skill to shoot it, keep your shit together when the animal comes in, breaking it down to keep the meat good and not spoiled, and get it out. It's a lot more to it than people probably think, you know. When you caloric intake, breaking that down, figure out how many calories per ounce and then how many calories per day. You know, as far as gearless goes, the most minimal you can go and still sustain yourself, which is a trial and error basis. Believe me, people generally pack too much shit in, and they're sucking wind on the way in, and then some people don't pack enough, and an issue happens, you can be in trouble. So fieldcraft, bushcraft, whatever you want to call it, having a high level of that, and then navigation, not being afraid to get lost. And I see everything, you know. When I say I've seen just about everything you could possibly imagine out there. And well, Cam, right? He kind of glorified it in the beginning, made it, you know, Cam's tougher than most, so he made it look probably a little bit more appealing than it actually is, unless you're just into it, you know.
Yeah, it just looks like a lot of fun when he does it.
yeah, and he made a post the other day, was like, he preferred me back when I talked shit about him and made fun of him than he does now, because it gave him reason to drive or push harder. And, you know, the thing that I would try to explain to people is, you know, you're not Cam, you know, and I don't mean just physically, but you have to have a mental, if you become comfortable with pain, you'll never be alone. And if you become comfortable with being uncomfortable, you're good. But you also have to become comfortable with being alone. And then you actually have to learn all this shit. And then you have to, you know, and that is not an easy task to do in the middle of the wilderness. And I would say the majority of Western states, the attrition rate of people that actually achieve their goal on a hunt's probably 80% that fall out early. And so you think about that, I think it's $48 million state of Colorado makes each year on tags. 80% of that is pretty much free money because no one kills anything anyway. So it's pretty crazy when you look at it that way.
Yeah, it's wild because, you know, you're going through all these different compartments of skills that you need to know to be successful in a split second moment. And it's just crazy to think about that, because I think the average person probably hasn't developed one of those skills to that level, let alone all of those skills to bring them all together and then be able to actually bring meat home and put it on the table. You know, you're talking about the level of fitness just to do that. Like, never mind hunting, just pack a bag that heavy and hike it that far and see how far you get. Like that's before you even start hunting. That's just getting.
That's to say you got to have gas in the tank once you get there. You know, and I'm not a CrossFit guy, and I've poked fun of it off and on. But then I built the gym downstairs, and I guess made a CrossFit gym. We had Matt Chan on the other day. I guess he was like a super well-known. I think he took second in 2012 in the games. Right. Super cool dude. But I've always been that hyper focused on the task at hand guy. So I backpack cardio a lot. I don't run. Right. You know, I'll do hill climbs and I throw 45 to 60 pounds on. I train with that. And I posted, like, everybody's asking for not everybody. A lot of people ask me for my workout. It's just not my thing to post workouts. Right. So I did a video one this morning, and it's pretty anticlimactic. I do leg raises and dips and pull-ups and push-ups, and
functional
there's
stuff.
nothing. I don't. I don't do any crazy dynamic movement. I don't do a lot of Olympic movements. I might do some, especially get the heart rate up, like one-arm dumbbell snatches, things like that. But it's worked, and so I just don't want to change it. And I have guys that want to give me these exercise programs and work with different people, which is great. I really appreciate that. But it's like, well, man, it's worked for almost 44 years now. I really don't want to change anything because I've remained uninjured. I've never had an issue physically making it. And so, I'm afraid to change, but it's a full-time commitment.
Yeah, totally. And it's like, obviously you're training for a specific thing, training to go and do all that stuff is a little bit different than training to be able to do 1,000 push-ups in one day against another guy. Like, you have to be able to do all of that stuff and be able to shoot a bow at the end of the day, because that's also part of the training regimen, is the amount of, practice and reps that you like. How often do you shoot, and how many arrows would you shoot in a session? More than probably I should even list, because I really like shooting. But let's say on average I shoot an hour a day, and I'm shooting 100 arrows a day, and sometimes it's way more than an hour and way more than 100 arrows. But today, for example, I got up and I worked out for probably longer than I normally do. Actually, I normally don't. My workouts are like 20, 30 minutes, sometimes less than that. They're just high intensity. I got home and I shot 30 arrows before my wife got here. Anyway, and do the podcast with you. I'm going to hang out with her for a while. I think I got roped in to go and look at a house. I'll shoot a little bit more in the middle of there, and then I'll have her drop me off. We live at 10,000 feet at the bottom of the mountain, and then I'll climb back up to the house. Above and beyond that is work. I was at the office, and so we do push-ups and air squats all day at the office. I don't know how to turn off people calling me. We do push-ups. Don't worry about it. That's the nature of the Zoom interviews. Is always something's happening, so don't worry.
But yeah, we do push-ups and air squats all day at the office, things like that. And so, I one of the things with people nowadays is the easy button, and I don't have time, and you can usually make some time. I worked full-time job as a single father, and I still made it to the gym. I mean, you can find a way, and you don't have a choice if you're going to, backpack hunt. You have to stay in a certain amount of shape.
Totally. Yeah. And it is, I think, that's one thing that's really interesting to me about it, because it really doesn't seem like it's very easy to fake it. Like there's all this other stuff that all these other industries on the internet where it's really, really easy to like Photoshop some abs on yourself and get some great lighting on Lightroom, or, post a video of you deadlifting 600 pounds with fucking fake bumper plates and stuff like that. But it's like, with something like this, you can't cut corners, because ultimately, you're either out in the mountain bringing the animals home and eating them, or you're not,
Yeah, there's a lot of people that you'll find on, in the industry that'll start out, let's say, bow hunting, and then, later on, all of a sudden become gun hunters.
Right.
That's usually because the skill level wasn't there. Maybe to bow hunts, they had to gun hunt, and there may be guys that gun hunt that get to a skill level that bow hunt or occasionally do both. But leaving TV aside, rumor gets around pretty fast when you're faking the funk. It's a small industry. And so, usually guys, good, bad, or indifferent, if they're legit, whatever goes beyond that, behind the scenes of their legitness, how would I put this? If you're on public or private land, doesn't matter. Or when I say public, if you're on limited access hunts, private land, public land, if you're successfully killing an animal with a compound or a stick bow, multiple a year, you probably got a pretty good idea what you're doing. There's some guys that only hunt public land and do, really well. I do both. Just because you can't hunt in Alberta without a guide. There's certain places you have to have private land to hunt. You're probably not going to hunt a lot of public land in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's like this mixed bag. The weird thing is when you have that mixed bag of hunts, there's different issues with all of them, meaning, you know, it could be if you are in Idaho hunting public land in northern Idaho, you're going to deal with rain and horrible deadfall and terrain. And then you could be hunting public or private land in Arizona, and it's just hotter than balls, and the ground's really loud to get close to the animals. There's always these different things that you're going to run into. And the more experience you get, the more you're able to just roll in anywhere and be successful. And there's a lot of guys like that.
Yeah. And that's the thing is it's just, or at least I can't speak on behalf of anything because I haven't been hunting before. This will be my first time trying to get out and hunt this fall, but that's really attractive to me because it's just experience, right? You know, but it's the challenge too that's interesting, right? I come from a background where, you know, like you, things weren't easy. I pretty much had to do everything on my own and do everything myself. And, you know, even just in some of the athletics that I picked up and stuff like that, you know, like powerlifting and now I've taken up running because I realized once I started getting interested in hunting, I went for one run and I was like, holy fuck, I am so out of shape. You know, you might be able to pull 500 pounds off the ground, but I couldn't run 200 yards without feeling like I was going to vomit.
Yeah, as I say, you were in a different shape. And that happens a lot too. I've powerlifted, and believe me, it was, I took some time off to do, you know, strongman powerlifting stuff. And I got strong, but man, it took a while to dial back down, and you can't flex cardio, but it's nice to have. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It doesn't, the Garmin stats aren't as cool as the deadlifting videos, but yeah, it makes a huge difference. And I've just noticed a huge difference, even just getting out and hiking, how much running has made a difference with that. But yeah, I was kind of interested to know how, before we kind of move on from Kifaru and some of that stuff, is how you guys are doing now that things were looking like they were kind of getting back to normal with this COVID thing. But has that affected you guys very much?
We're busier than we've ever been by record numbers. So I think a lot of it's the American made, you know, the longevity of the pack. We take very good of our customers, just American pride. And, you know, two, we're getting more and more just well known. You know, I'm out there a lot, my partner Frank and a lot of my other friends that are legitimately, you probably noticed in the outdoor industry, there's a lot of people that promote a lot of products because they're paid. Nothing wrong with that. But, you know, we've tried to cater ourselves to being honest, whether it's about our gear or other gear we use that we review and talk about. And I think it's taken a while for people to understand that we are putting our best foot forward to get people in the right gear, whether it's ours or something we don't even sell, help people with tuning their bows. I mean, we're truly trying to not just take your money. We're trying to help you. I think that's helped out quite a bit.
Yeah, be a leader in the industry and help out new people even coming in who need the direction and stuff like that. Yeah, because you do. I mean, I don't know so much about this industry, but I mean, definitely with you know, like some of the fitness related stuff, you know, every couple weeks, an influencer is promoting a new pre-workout that's their best pre-workout that they've ever tried, and then 6 months later, it's the best pre-workout they ever tried. So I really do like when companies are honest. But yeah, I you know, you were saying earlier you kind of started out shooting a compound, but obviously you're one of the biggest names and personalities when it comes to the stick bow. So what made you change initially from starting out shooting compound, and then, you know, now you're out there typically shooting a recurve and hunting with a recurve instead?
Yeah, so I shot compound competitively. I bow hunted with one, you know, tournament bow. You know, kind of got 4 or 5 different bows, one for indoor, one for field, one for 3Ds. And I'd taken some animals at really long distances. I've always been pretty lucky to be able to shoot really well. And I did a podcast with another guy and kind of broke down ethical shooting distances. Like, mathematically, God forbid you bring in the voice of reason and common sense in. And I was just like, well, if an arrow's flying at 170 feet per second, the equivalent to a bow flying 290 feet per second or an arrow flying 290, that means my ethical shooting distance, if I can group well enough, is 67 yards and yours is 26 or whatever the mathematical equation would be. Anyway, needless to say, I got a ton of hate mail from traditional bow hunters about that podcast. And it was, you suck, you'd never kill anything with a stick bow. You're using technology to, whatever to take you. Anyway, so I'm really goal-oriented and challenge a guy that likes to accept a challenge. And I was like, well, I'm going to give it a whirl. I made fun of stick bow guys forever. And so I sold all my compound stuff. And when I say that, it's not like, I sold my spare tennis shoes. This was a lifetime of gear. Bow presses, arrow saws. I kept the arrow saw, but bow presses, 7 or 8 different sights and arrow rests and quivers. We're talking thousands and thousands of dollars a gear, multiple different bows.
Lifetime of investing in this. That's
in learning too. That's the thing. It got boring. So I went to Rocky Mountain Specialty Gear, and kind of one of the Yodas of traditional archery is Tom Clum. Been friends with him. I walked in. I think I actually sent a group text out to several guys this time. I'm going traditional. The traditional guys are like, that's awesome. And the compound guys are like, are you fucking crazy? And so I immersed myself in that. And, about that same time I met my wife, Amy, or not met, but we got back together. And so she's been going through all this with me. When I say going, I am psychotically addicted at a level that I don't think people understand, because I'm not very good at sucking at anything. So that first year I had 10 or 12 hunts. I think I shot 10 animals. It was an uphill road to hoe.
Holy crow.
I shot a black bear and a couple mule deer, elk and some turkeys and whitetail and some I shot all kinds of stuff. Anyway, but the whole time it was like, I'm going to break this bow over my knee at times, and there's other times I was super happy. But it really rekindled my love for archery. Rewind 10 years, I'd call in sick when a new bow would come in to set it up, a compound. And when I went to traditional archery, I had 3 bows in boxes I hadn't even taken out of the box. My love for it was just gone. It's back for traditional archery, but it's also because I'm not as good at it. I'm green. I'm constantly learning. And you can never be. I can grab a compound today, walk out to 80 yards. I'll shoot a 4-inch group, a 6-inch group on a bet, easy, with no. I mean, I may grab that stick bow one day, and at 30 yards I can shoot that, and then the next day at 20 I'm not hitting the paper plate. I mean, there's a lot to do it. And so, ignorance and determination and drive went a long way, because I think I have that little hashtag, the NFQ, never fucking quit. It's on my quivers. Is you got to have a really short-term memory, so you don't remember what last dumb shit you did. So and then just don't give up. It eventually will pan out for you. You may have 30,000 steps on the old Garmin by the end of the day trying to get an animal, and it may be multiple days like that, but it is very rewarding when it happens.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I mean, I've only just started kind of doing it, but I've had a ton of guys message me and being like, why doesn't a big guy like you shoot a recurve? And I'm like, have you shot any kind of bow? Because just over the last 2 months, it's like, this is fucking hard. Just the amount of time for me to get my accuracy to where I can, at least at short distances, put it where I want to go. But to then, with all the other elements that you're talking about, make it even more difficult. But by shooting a stick bow, like, it's just, that's a whole nother level, it seems like.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So yeah, you were just talking about, kind of why you ended up initially switching to recurve and how much rewarding that was. And, that totally makes sense to me, because to me, I feel like, kind of with anything that I do, the greater the challenge, and even how you were talking about, like, having to go through that process of starting something new and then, getting the good feeling of kind of realizing you've hit a point, well, oh, okay, well, I've made some progress here and now I'm doing better. And that just overcoming those little challenges along the way, I imagine it would be even that much more satisfying to eat something that you killed with the recurve, because you kind of like, you have let's say you kill an animal from 200 yards with a rifle, and then kind of the next level up of, I feel like that kind of satisfaction would be obviously a compound bow, but you're getting really intimate with these animals when you're out there and hunting them and killing them in the wild. And so do you find that that's just kind of like a new level of satisfaction and I guess kind of fulfillment in the craft to be able to do that with a stick bow?
Yeah. And it's many different ways, because it's let's say if you've been, I'm kind of a fat shamer, obese, fat, whatever, your whole life. And
I did a whole episode on fat shaming, so that's cool.
Well, I'm into it. I'm about it, because if I didn't get fat shamed, I'd still be fat. So, you've weighed 320, 340 pounds your whole life. You got picked on in school. You set a goal, and your goal is to hit 180 pounds, and you drop 100 and some pounds. That is what it was like initially with this bow, is the impossible would eventually become possible. And I don't want to over exaggerate it, but literally like an elk hunt I was on, it just didn't seem, no matter how hard headed I was, it just wasn't going to happen. And, and it was a backpack hunt. And finally we called in a bull. I shot it at like 10 yards, super close, full bugle, screaming in. And I shot a mule deer at 4 feet, 5 feet in its bed. And it was just the things as I was evolving or adapting in my hunting style. I'm learning, and I'm also learning the short-term memory thing. I need to forget what happened the other day. Like, you're only as good as your last shot. And then to stay positive all the time. Because, how much you train and compound or whatever, stick bow, things aren't going to pan out, no matter how much you work at something. I try to tell people, like, if you're 5'7", not everyone's spud web, probably not going to make it in the NBA. It's just not in the cards, right? So, yeah. But it doesn't mean you can't get really good at basketball or whatever. And so, with the recurve, the things I had done my entire life that were relatively easy were now becoming quite possibly not impossible, but not probable. And so,
it wasn't a sure thing for you anymore. Yeah.
No, it was not. I mean, you can only, I think there's only so many ways to skin a cat. So you're checking the wind and you're staying motivated and you're getting into elk and shit. It's just not panning out or whatever the animal. But eventually I got the hang of it to where now, I'm not having a lot of issues, putting animals on the ground. And, for us, we eat 350, 400 pounds of wild game. We feed it to our dogs. We're about to get 2 Pyrenees, Great Pyrenees. So,
nice.
When people don't, everything's wrapped in saran wrap and cellophane and everything else. It is unique. It's weird. You see people that have eaten meat their whole life, but the moment you say that was deer, they don't have anything to do with it. That's so foreign to me, because that's all I've really lived off of is wild game. And so trying to explain to people, how rewarding it is, but also how nutritious it is. That big package of the whole thing is at first difficult for me, years ago, because like, this is just what you do. Like, what's your problem? Now it's like, well, the world's changing and there's going to have to be an explanation so people understand it. So.
Yeah. And it's weird too, because people have such a disconnect with their food, right? Like it doesn't even cross their mind when they walk into a grocery store and they reach down, they grab a steak, they grab a pack of ground beef, they grab their fucking breakfast sausages, and they have absolutely no idea where that came from. And it's funny too, because, another of the big reasons why I started to kind of get an interest in this was, when the whole COVID thing kicked off, I was one of those people who was like, oh, look at these fucking idiots buying toilet paper. And I'm thinking to myself, it's like, you can't eat that. But then I went to the grocery store, and it became real the day I went to the grocery store, and the meat aisle was cleared out. And I was one of those suckers that, where I'm like, holy fuck, like, we're so reliant on these corporations and these industries just to feed ourselves. If they just cut that off, everybody's fucked.
Well, yeah, not me, because I got like 4 deep freezers full. But
exactly.
You're right. It's true. And the weird thing is you know, you look at, not to get too much in depth into this, but, you know, nothing lives forever. Okay. And so you first take the part like you were talking about. They just are killing it with a checkbook. And then, you know, the lady or the man at the checkout aisle is the broker, right? But their hands aren't dirty. But their hands are dirty because they are paying to kill an animal. It's just already been killed. And then you look at like some of the more in Africa, the white rhino, for example. There was this huge deal on this white rhino. I don't know if you remember that guy was getting death threats. Kids couldn't go to school anymore.
Cecil the lion as well. There's lots of stuff like that. There's a lady with the giraffe. You know, she basically removed all her social media because, you know, fucking Ricky Gervais or whatever. He's like a crazy vegan, I guess. And he went after her, and then she had, you know, people sending her death threats.
So the thing that happens, which people don't understand, obviously the circle of life, if you actually, you know, God forbid you read a fucking book and learn what happens in wildlife, in the wild, when animals get beyond their breeding prime, they cannot breed anymore. And so they are actually a negative impact towards wildlife because they will not let the younger generation breed because they're still meaner than shit, still tougher than fuck. But they can't have sex because they can't breed. And so they're not letting the other animals breed, meaning there is no offspring. Now, I am not a doctor, but that is bad if you want more animals. And so in the case of like the white rhino and the giraffe and multiple other examples, these people that are over there live off this game. If they're going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars from an American that wants to put one of those animals on the ground, it's going to die soon anyway from old age. It is not a benefit to the population because it's not letting animals breed. And the revenue over there, there's no money generated for, you know, countries, you know, not in poverty, but some of them are poverty. You get a lot of money, you know, monetary benefit from that. So I look at it as like, well, biologically, scientifically, the animal's going to die within 6 months to a year. It is not letting the younger animals breed. The village gets everything from the animal and they get money. Sounds pretty beneficial to me, but because it's an animal, it's got 4 legs and they're endangered, which I understand, people really throw up red flags. No, I'm not into shooting endangered species by any means. You don't want to do that. But if the animal's about to die and it's a bonus all the way around, you really need to take emotion out of it and look at it from a standpoint of, are you helping that specific species? And in the case of all these people getting death threats, the species was worse off than that animal living. That has nothing to do with me shooting a stick bow, nor have I ever hunted in Africa. But I have a legitimate amount of common sense, and the way this world looks at a lot of this is just crazy for me.
Yeah, it's weird. And it's super weird. Well, just, you know, because people are pretty like to live in their bubble here, right? And we have it so easy that it's just the idea of doing something like that strikes people's heartstrings so much. But it's like, if you went there and you saw how a lot of the way the people in the villages live, you know, you have to think about that. It's like, aren't you team people? You know, it's like you see these people, it's like they have nothing, but something like hunting brings so much money, so much revenue, businesses, and even food to these villages who are otherwise, you know, living in horrible conditions a lot of the time. You know, it's a net positive for most people, but we've kind of anthropomorphized, or whatever that word is, where, you know, with like Disney and a lot of the other kind of weird human qualities that we've kind of given to animals, where people can't separate that, but they're okay with certain kinds of animals. Like they're perfectly okay with a 1,600-pound cow being killed and put on their plate for a steak. But for some reason, the idea of eating a bear is just this monstrous,
I don't know if you saw my recent post of the predators I posted.
I was going to ask you about that on this podcast, so this is a good time. Yeah.
So, out of all of them, the wolf, I got some hate mail from the wolf. Now, the wolf, from my standpoint, and most biologists that aren't tampered with, that's the Charles Manson. That's the serial killer of the wild. Are they cool looking? Yeah. Can they be? Can they live in the wild and if they're maintained and be okay? Probably. There's it's hard once they get going. It's hard to slow them down. There's no off button, and so there's a lot of arguments back and forth of, do they help? Are they bad? Are they good? Anyway, the moral of the story for me is I have been everywhere where there's wolves. Not a lot of good comes out of it. And the people arguing with me have never stepped foot in the fucking forest. Mm-hmm. But they're telling me it's bad to shoot a wolf. When I shot that wolf, we shot 4 primary predators in 5 days, 3 of them with a recurve. Mm-hmm. You know how many 4-legged animals I saw that eat grass?
No idea.
I'm with Hero.
Right.
No. So
they're devastating the populations.
Yeah. And it's like, we saw multiple packs of wolves. And it's like, look, people, I'm not out there because I'm this, glorified assassin. The wolf was a bonus, but I'm up there. I like to hunt. Mountain lion tastes great. Bobcat tastes great. Didn't eat the wolf. Wouldn't eat a wolf. They're not an animal you eat, but they are a detriment to the population of ungulates. And this isn't something I really ever want to argue about because it's like so black and white to me. If there is a large number of predators and a small number of ungulates, 4-legged grass-eating animals, there's a problem, and the predators need to be managed for the ungulates to thrive. That's it. It's that common sense. Now, you put that into the perspective of someone that's never hunted, or not perspective. You put that in the eyes of someone that's never hunted or been outdoors. You're shooting a wolf that's been basically humanized.
That's Fido to them, right?
Yeah. And I've watched them yank newborn calves out of their mom's stomachs. They'll hamstring a moose. It's gruesome. But people skip that. They don't pay attention to that. They just want to see a wolf howl. Well, if you want to see a wolf howl, that's great, but the numbers have to be managed. And the human encroachment, for example, they want to reintroduce wolves in Colorado. I get it, but what's amazing to me is grizzly bears were here before. No one's crying about those because they eat people. Yeah. So we're not bitching about grizzlies, but we want wolves back. Well, the problem is there's not vast wildernesses here for those wolves to hide in. They're going to be in our front doors, right? They're going to be chasing the elk population or the mule deer, and there's not enough
eating dogs or whatever.
Yeah, there's not going to be enough room for everything to hide. Where different parts of Canada and Idaho, big parts of Montana, big wildernesses, the ungulates can hide a lot easier, where here the wildernesses aren't that big. And the long-term repercussions of that, no one knows, right? We're reintroducing something that hasn't been around for a long time for a very good reason. And now they're wanting to reintroduce it. So I get bashed a lot for it, but I'm huge into predator management just because I see how many predators are on the ground. And you go into a wilderness area and scout in Colorado, you scout like early summer. For black bear, for example, their rut is in June. Okay, so if you're on a mountainside, there's only bear canisters only. You can only go in the wilderness with a bear canister. There's bears jumping out of the dumpsters and shit in the parking lot. You see 9 to 15 while you're glassing. Common sense would tell you there's too many bears, but God forbid we reintroduce a spring bear season here, and it's just ludicrous to me because it's counterproductive for what they're wanting to have happen. To me, which is obviously increased ungulate population. And it's not like you're going to thin them out, right? I mean, you're going to thin them some, but you're not going to crush the population. But convincing that of someone that eats beef is beyond me. Beef's okay, kill a cow, but don't shoot a bear. And you can eat bear; they taste great.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it.
Yeah, it's super super weird. It doesn't make any sense, and especially like, I guess I can understand people because it's counterintuitive to be like, well, you have to kill animals to maintain healthy populations, or kill animals so other animals can survive. But it makes perfect sense, right? Because and the other thing that people don't understand is that the majority of what goes into conserving wildlife and conserving wild animals and their populations are hunters, right? Like, it's very carefully regulated. A lot of people think that even some of these animals are endangered. Everyone thinks that bears are endangered, but I live out in the country here too, not super super rural or anything, but like fucking black bears are everywhere. Like any of the sort of populated campsites, they're in neighborhoods. Like even cougars here, like we've got cougars coming through neighborhoods weekly.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you said it really well there. I mean, you talk about people thinking they're endangered, and I've said, I've gotten messages, why would you shoot a bear? They're endangered. I just got a message after the Rogan podcast, a lengthy one about I shot a grizzly in BC. Mm-hmm. It's not uncommon for us to see 3 to 5 grizzlies in one day in BC mm-hmm. after they banned the hunt. So it's human emotion that's voting and human emotion that's replying. And I said, hey, you should do some research, talk to your local biologist. Grizzlies aren't extinct. They're not endangered. There's too many of them. And even it's the neutral Democratic Party that screwed everything up over there, I think is what it's called. But mm-hmm. they admitted there was a sustainable population and almost too many grizzlies, but the public perception was bad, and that's why they banned it. Mm-hmm. When you vote like that, and it's bad for the ungulate population, because grizzlies are hell and Jesus on moose. They're really mm-hmm. hard on moose, and I guarantee the moose number population goes down, then the hunting allocation tags go down, the revenue goes down. It's nothing good comes out of it when the easiest thing to do would have been to do was just keep hunting grizzlies. Mm-hmm. But you're
also voting in favor of people that have absolutely no clue about anything that has to do with hunting or wildlife or habitat management at all. Like that's like you're saying, like you're voting on emotion. It's like I guarantee the people that are casting a vote that way have never been hunting their entire life, much less maybe even gone out hiking for more than an afternoon.
Here in Colorado, you would be at like the Belmar Mall, and there would be people that with sign sheets like sign this to reintroduce wolves in Colorado. Mm-hmm. And you obviously they don't know who you are, so it's like, well, you ever seen a wolf? No. You've been in the wilderness? I went hiking a couple times, but they're wanting them to come in because their life's never going to change. They're not going to be, they're going to go hiking once every 5 years, nothing. But they're going to vote, and they have the right to vote. But would you want me to vote on an invasive brain surgery procedure with no info? Mm-hmm. I wouldn't want me to vote for that. I'm not a brain surgeon. We're asking them to do that. We're not asking them. They are able to do that, and it's legal for them to do that. And it's just psychotic to me. So.
Yeah, and about the grizzly bear thing too, which is interesting because that just seems to be like common unknowledge, if there's a word for that. But up here, like I live in about an hour and a half outside of Vancouver, but up in Whistler, they had to close down the hot springs there because the bears up there, I believe that they were grizzlies, had become so aggressive and used to campers that it's now been shut down completely. You can't camp at the hot springs for 2 years because of the how many aggressive grizzly bears are there.
Well, and what's crazy, like here in Colorado, and this is another thing that is, and I'll quit talking about predators in a minute, they're still dying. We're just paying an insane amount of taxpayers' money to hire professional hunter, federal through state and federal funds that hire trappers and hunters to go kill them. No monetary gain. There's a monetary loss. What they're doing with them, who knows? It's just under the radar, but they're still dying. They're still, so probably what they did in there is they went in and they weeded those grizzlies out, which is why, there's a 1-2 year timeline because they're going to kill them all.
They're going to destroy or trap them. Yeah, destroy them. But then where people could be doing that and funding the industry and taking food home.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I will say the biggest issue with grizzlies is they're not really edible. And that was the problem, or not problem. I mean, that was the big shtick, was it's considered, a trophy hunt.
Right.
You can eat them. There's certain ways to prepare them, but it's really not, it's
not preferable.
They eat rotten meat so much and everything else and that was the big shtick. And that's where I'm like, well, they're killing so much other stuff and you're okay with that, but you can't use a human, which is obviously we're the ones with the brains, to make conscious decisions off of what's going on in the ground. We just had a bunch of people vote that had no idea what they're doing, or you guys did in this case.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because people they'll make the argument, well, before people came here, wildlife just managed itself. It's like, yeah, but there's people here now.
Yeah,
right?
That's exactly right.
And, people like to think that we're just playing in their backyard, but it's like, well, no, like we're part of the ecosystem that is the world. And we have to deal with these animals. And obviously people who support that lifestyle want to be able to do that for a very long time. Because a lot of people think that hunters are just these murderers who just want to see animals die and have this lust for killing, but it's totally not what it is. Often it's hunters that actually love wildlife and animals more than anybody else. That's why they want to spend so much time out in the woods.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I've gotten the same kind of argument with lots of people, and the common, common sense is no, any hunter with any brains, which is most hunters have brains. If you kill all the animals, you don't get to go hunting anymore. So obviously you're going to work on maintaining a sustainable population that makes sense to keep allocating tags to go do what they love, feed their family. And so you guys would just kill everything if you could. Well, what sense does that make? There'd be nothing left to hunt. That's a short-term goal. So yeah, that kind of stuff is, again, it's human emotion, and it's hard to get around that.
Yeah, totally. Do you know much about, because you were saying about the NDP and like how they had voted on a bunch of weird stuff in BC. I had been reading recently that they've now called for the call of moose cows and calves. Do you know much about that in BC?
I've heard, I've had guys send me some articles and everything else, which is, to me, if that is true, that's a good way to basically stop hunting. When you start culling those, obviously that tag allocation goes down, and it just doesn't make sense. You can't hunt grizzlies, but they want to cull the moose population. Yeah,
which is, totally counterproductive, especially if those are the animals that you want to have healthy populations, because those are the ones they're eating. But back to like the predator thing. Why do you think the people are okay with killing a deer, but they're not okay with you killing a cougar, even though you're going to eat it?
Even though I think most people think you don't eat it. I had a picture of me packing out. You generally pack out your lion, you put it over your shoulders. It's not a big dick thing. It's not a manly thing. It's just long, so it fits over your neck, and that's just an easy way to carry it out. And people don't realize mountain lion is one of the best tasting animals. So I think ignorance or lack of knowledge is one thing. Two, like Disney and humanizing animals is another one, because you think about it, the one animal that can eat you, they're mad that you're shooting it, but the animals that can't eat you, they're okay with. So a lot of it's just lack of knowledge. Black bear is unbelievable. It's actually greasy, so like chili and things like that, it's really good for a burger or whatever. But I think they think you can't eat them, and then since people don't see them a lot, they may think, again, they're endangered, which, again, human emotion, no common sense, and not actually doing your homework and studying and learning about nature, biology, science, learning what's going on. I think that's probably the biggest problems.
Yeah. And it's, I wanted to kind of, because you were talking about predators, and I watched that fucking grizzly bear charge video that you had on your moose hunt. And just for anyone that's listening to this, go and Google Aron Snyder bear attack or bear charge or whatever comes up. And Yeah, like, you spend so much time out in the wild. You must come across crazy shit like that all the time. So I was wondering, like, at what point, because you were saying that you guys were actually calling it in with a moose call.
Yeah.
At any point, did you think that maybe we had made a mistake?
Man, as horrible as this sounds, not for me, because it was focused on the other guy. But I did think it would stop at the stump where it stood on its hind legs. We get some cool photos and, go from there. And, it came into like maybe 14 yards and fired a warning shot. We didn't want to kill it, obviously. Fired a warning shot. I would have shot it, but I'd already filled my grizzly tag that year, and Brian didn't have one. And it was I think it was a female. It was a big female, like, 9-foot mountain grizzly. And wasn't worried when we fired the first shot. It stopped. When it took 2 or 3 more steps closer after that first shot, I was like, okay, this is going to be something where I might have to knock this thing off Aaron, because he had the rifle. Mm-hmm. But it finally turned around and it ran off. And I got a bit of an adrenaline junkie. So that stuff's pretty cool to me. And then I'm somewhat desensitized just because I've been, charged quite a bit. So it wasn't that big of a deal if you're used to it. And, you think about somebody that lived in the mountains their entire life, never been in a car. Mm-hmm. That's going to be a pretty big deal for them, feel like their lives in danger and out of control. Maybe if I was around sharks, not a big shark person. Wasn't that big of a deal. That same that next spring, I actually had a black bear charge me that I killed with my recurve, and I shot it, once here and once here, and it was a dominant bear because it was protecting its grass where it was feeding. That was cool. It wasn't, people kind of blow that one out of proportion too, but and maybe it deserves to be blown out of proportion, but when you're out there every day, it's not that big of a deal when you're used to it. It's no different than somebody running a red light in front of you thinking, oh man, I could have got hit. Well, it doesn't have teeth and claws, but it's actually a lot more dangerous than that bear was. So, not to say I want to get eaten by a bear, right? But I mean, it was one of those, things at the end of it. It wasn't like I was, freaked out to go back into nature or whatever, and shit happens, right? The Wolverine was probably the most abnormal situation I've ever been in. Not scary.
It's rare to even see one, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you're up there, you see them more often. It's rare to get close to them. You see them from a distance all the time. They'll blow a basin out of mountain goats quick. They're hell and Jesus on mountain goats. But, yeah, I mean, there was 2 of them. They were fighting. And
crazy.
I snuck down in and got one. But that's another thing. We talked to biologists before we went out, and they were talking about how bad the Wolverine population is in this area, and they allocate tags because of that. I had a lot of people ask me what it tastes like. I didn't eat the Wolverine. And this is another thing, eat what you kill. If you trap a mouse, I highly doubt people are eating it. You put your dog down, you eating it? Probably not. Well, if a guy shoots a coyote, they want you to eat it. But if you put your dog down, you're probably not going to eat your dog. So that's obviously a very primal way to look at things. But I shot it because the herd numbers needed to be managed of Wolverines, if you could call a large group a herd. I shot it too because it was cool, right? I mean, I'd say cool. It was one hell of an adventure, and they are hard on the mountain goats in there. So,
well, you were saying like I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you got one shot off, and then he bust the arrow off, and you had to shoot it again.
Three times I shot it, like, I didn't range it 10, 12 yards. The first shot, maybe 14, whatever it was. And then it was a pretty good hit, but, it was raining hard, and I had shit running down both legs, right? I was 12 yards from Wolverine, and, from 2. And, it ran off, and I hit it again at 40. With the recurve, I just guessed, and I made a great shot. And we thought it went down at that point, and we got pretty close to it, and it was plenty awake still, and it was coming at me, and I put another one in it right here, like, I don't know, not very far, a few steps away, right. And it pinned it to the ground, and it bit the arrow in half and pulled itself off the arrow and then died. So
holy shit,
it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, they're wild little animals, but yeah, it's interesting because the other thing that people don't understand about, like, yes, there's the eat what you kill thing. And then there's also this aspect of hunting where these populations need to be managed so people can still go enjoy, these other animals and the animals that we're actually going to be eating. But the other thing that they don't realize, I think, is that these animals don't live forever. And when you're talking about, people will be appalled that you go, God forbid, kill an elk and then, you've harvested your own meat. But, there's no easy way for those animals to die in the wild. They're either aging out or, ending up with like some catastrophic injury and getting sick and suffering, or being eaten alive by a fucking grizzly bear. Like, I've watched the YouTube video of that I think it was a moose calf, basically being dragged out of the womb by a grizzly bear. And it's like, they're shredded by wolves, like you were saying, and then a hunter will come, and it's probably one of the most ethical ways to kill an animal with a bow and arrow, or by hunter.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of things people don't understand, like black bears and grizzlies, they kill their young so they can breed again. So if a sow has cubs, if they can go over, and I've watched them step on the body and pop the head off, they kill all the cubs, the female will go back into estrus, and they get to have sex. So they're killing kids to get to have sex. Yeah. So yeah, people talk about cuddly bears. I'm like, yeah, you haven't lived, I guess, until you watch them pop a cub's head off so it can go have sex again. So my view on it is way different, because I'm actually on the ground looking at things and how these animals interact, especially, the hamstringing of the moose and elk. Pretty gruesome to watch a pack of wolves, hamstring an elk to where it's still running with 3 legs and it's trying to run away with 2 legs. And then it's got 6 to 7 wolves on it, pulling it apart and
still screaming.
Still kicking and screaming. So I look at things a lot differently probably than most people that have never been in the wild. No different than raccoons on your porch. Oh, that thing's cute, don't kill it. Next thing you know, it's in your wall of your house. No, kill it. Oh no, just get somebody here to trap it. And the next thing you know, it comes back and it's in your roof of your house, digging out the insulation, and it had babies. And it's like, no, kill them all. Okay, well, what changed in there? It's still the same fucking raccoon it was 2 weeks ago. But just now it's in your eating your insulation. It's still a raccoon. Yeah. It's just some people that have dealt with raccoons look at it a lot differently, because you've seen them, how many offspring they have, how long they live, what a nuisance they can be. And so, people with common sense, with, a lot of people call it citizen science, know that, yeah, raccoon may be cuddly, but they're meaner than shit. They'll eat your cat and your dog, and they'll fuck up your house quick. Yeah, and
spreading diseases and all kinds of different shit like that. It's like, it's not hard to justify when you look past like that emotional aspect of it. And, and even just as far as, like managing, like you were saying, the population of bears in places like here in Chilliwack or North Vancouver, some of these areas that are right kind of at the base of the mountains and stuff. If you don't, then it's not raccoons in your backyard. You've got fucking black bears digging through your garbage cans, and
yeah.
And then they're going to get killed anyways, because conservation is going to come in and be like, this is a danger. Or, like this just happened about 3 weeks ago here. There's a little lake, just tiny little lake. It's more of like kind of a public picnic area. And there's a fucking cougar running around going berserk in someone's backyard. And ultimately they had to go in and kill it. And everyone was complaining, well, why did you kill it? Why did you kill it? Well, if we darted it, it's going to be maybe a couple minutes before it actually goes down, and then it's running all over the neighborhood, and you're right by a public area. And it's like, this is what happens when you don't manage these predator populations.
Yeah. Well, it's very easy for people that only have 10% of the info, 15% or whatever. Again, like the invasive brain surgery, right? If you're not an expert at something or have a fairly good grasp on it, you probably shouldn't get the vote. Because you just don't know enough to vote intelligently. And, specifically with mountain lions, you guys have a pretty substantial mountain lion problem. if a mountain lion's screwing around in someone's backyard, you got a mountain lion problem, because they'll only live so close to each other, which means, they're spreading out. And that lion, obviously, his new area was in a housing area in development, and who knows what damage he'd done that people haven't reported yet, or how much he would have done depending on how long he stayed there, meaning he's still going to eat, other cats and dogs and shit. So, I mean, they're not
the thing with mountain lions too is you rarely even see them in the wild. So to have one running around in your neighborhood when, I've gone, out into the woods, hundreds, if not thousands of times since I was a kid, and I've never seen a cougar in the wild. So when you've got them running around your neighborhood, they don't generally like to be around people. That's not a place that those cats even would want to be, I guess, I would assume, unless they're starving or, like you said, they've been pushed out of their territory. Yeah.
And that's pretty much how it works. Generally it's not starving in your neck of the woods. It's other, prime predators, whether it be mountain lions, wolves. They've got to eat, so they've got to move to where they can eat, and as human encroachment happens, they'll move into towns, or at least partially into towns.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, because a lot of people talk about different kinds of game and different kinds of hunt and stuff like that. So I was wondering for you, like with the recurve bow and having to change just even your hunting style. You were saying on I think it was on Joe's podcast about that scenario where you got within 4 yards of was it a mule deer?
Yeah, 4 feet.
Or 4 feet. So that's insanely close. So like changing over to the recurve, how has that changed the way you hunt? And maybe you can kind of tell people, a little bit more, maybe one of the crazier stories about this style of hunting that you've gotten to experience out in the woods.
Yeah. As far as like how it's changed, I mean, it's as simple as you probably think. When you can shoot, softballs and baseballs at 80 yards, 60 yards, or your effective range is 60 to 80. And then now that's a par 4, you want to get sub 20. You have to be more patient. You have to be very willing to be pinned down in one spot for several hours waiting for something to move. You have to have the physical ability to go over and over and over again if you have blown stalks or something moves just because of the distance. So patience was, a big one. Obviously, quiet clothing, as weird as that sounds, like when you draw a bow on something that's 10 feet away, they want to live, right? And they're used to mountain lions attacking them, so they're pretty amped up and ready to bolt at any time. So knowing, certain, I used to not like to hunt in the wind because it was hard to shoot a compound. Now I pray for heavy wind because animals don't want to get out of their beds when it's windy. It covers your noise a lot more. So just things like that, have changed. And, the other thing too is before where, my badge of honor may have been maybe how far away I shot something. Now, if I can tell a story of, in that case, when I drew my bow back, my arrow was between its horns when I first started to draw. So crazy. You've snuck in that animal's wheelhouse and you've earned it. Not say a rifle hunter, a compound hunter doesn't earn it, but you've really done your homework and you've stayed quiet, learned the animal, made the shot, everything. So that mule deer was a big one. That was cool. The wolverine, that was 12 yards away or so. That the elk, I don't know how many animals I've shot, but it's triple digits, and with a recurve, and all of them are close. And when I say close, the farthest shot I've taken was 43 yards, a couple at that distance. The rest are 31, 26, 22, 18, 12, 14, and it's just you've earned it, and it's even more rewarding when you're able to do that.
Yeah, it's so crazy because like you were saying, with a rifle, you can make a kill from a couple hundred yards, and then you move to the compound bow, and you're hoping to get within 40, like you were saying, which is a challenge in itself, and probably no easy task, I would imagine. But then to be 5 feet and the animal not knows you're there, like how did you get that close, and you didn't spook it? Like, did you take your shoes off? Were you walking around your socks, or was the wind just perfect? What was happening in that moment?
Yeah, all of those, the the mule deer was hot, so how it was bedded, where it was bedded, we knew it would stay in that bed for a while because the way the sun was pivoting, we knew the sun wouldn't hit it for quite some time, but able to get over there to it. And then I was in my socks, and then I was getting 15, 20 mile an hour plus wind gusts. And so every 30 seconds we'd get a big wind gust. I'd take a step, 30 seconds later, same thing. Pretty soon I was within 9 or 8 yards of it. And I was actually throwing rocks to try to get it to stand, but he didn't want to have any part of that. He didn't want to get in the heat. And, he probably just thought rocks were falling, so he wasn't moving. And so I got to a point, I was like, you know what, I'm going to end up shooting this thing in that rock it's bedded under if I can get on top of it. So I, got to the rock and literally was maybe 2 foot tall. Wind gust blew, got my left foot up there. 30, 45 seconds later, which is weird because I'm 6 to 7 feet from this deer now, right? I can see its ears twitching. Like wind gust.
I can imagine the adrenaline being that close. Like you could almost reach out and touch the animal.
Yeah, I could have grabbed its horns, So that wind gust hit, and I pushed off with my right foot. And luckily the wind gust was long enough. I got both my feet planted. And then I was like really, shitting my knickers because I'm like, can I draw and it not hear me? Or do I wait for another wind gust? Because, there's so many things going on in your mind. You don't always make the right decision. And luckily, in the meantime of all the thinking about what I should do, another wind gust kicked up and I drew my bow back and made the shot. So,
wow, that's wild.
The mountain goat was the same kind of thing. We saw it bed, got above it in the cliffs. And I don't know, my rangefinder wouldn't range it. So it was sub 10 yards, sub 9 yards. We just got it in the cliffs, and it's crazy terrain. I don't know if you've seen that video, but I shot that thing walking right under me when we got it out of its bed, and just patience and common sense and being super quiet.
Yeah, and they say mountain goat is one of the most difficult to hunt, mainly because of the terrain. Would you say so?
Yeah, they're one of the, I say dumber, but they're one of the animals that are less spooky of humans, but they're also an animal that can. They've got cushy pads to grip on rocks. You can die real quick on an antelope or a mountain goat hunt. My buddy Clay, he lives in Kelowna. Him and his brother Bart lives up in Smithers, and they have a saying. There's some goats you can kill, and there's some goats that kill you, and that's what they're talking about is don't push the issue to try to get a goat because. You can get cliffed out, stuck on cliffs, fall off cliffs. I mean, there's just some mountain goats, they live in terrain that you couldn't get to with a helicopter.
Or even being up in altitude or in a place like that too, where it could even just be something as simple as weather, like a weather change, and all of a sudden you're in a scary situation where you're stuck in a particular spot or like snow. Yeah, like there's so many elements there. Just that could be super dangerous.
We killed mine at 13,000 feet, so right under that. So we were pretty high in elevation.
Wow. Yeah. Have you ever gotten any sort of serious industries or kind of scary situations where you're like, this might be the day my luck runs out kind of situations?
Yeah. A few times I pissed out a kidney stone. I was so low 6 miles back, and while that, may not, probably highly unlikely won't kill you, I thought I was dying. I had my gallbladder act up a couple times that I think I wished I would have died. It was painful. But those are relatively minor as far as the sense of like the death factor. I got stuck in a blizzard in the cliffs on a hunt where it's like 300-foot drop on one side and not quite that much, but still death on the other, and couldn't see more than a few feet. Another phone call there. Couldn't see more than a few feet, and had to just wait it out. Well, then you have the the cold factor. How long can I wait here? Before I freeze and lose the feeling in my fingers and my feet. Where now I'm gonna have issues. Getting out physically, just walking, and I've had that happen before. But overall, if anything ever happens to me, it's probably going to be lightning or cliffs. Those are. I'm not worried about lions or bears. It's probably going to be me doing some dumb shit on a cliff or a storm comes in.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. I've been in the lightning situation before. This is actually about a month. Well, no, it's about two or 3 months ago. And I went on kind of like an alpine hike in the middle of winter. I just wanted to get out, and I didn't think there'd be as much snow as there was, but we kind of got up there. But what was happening was, because this was kind of spring, so there's hot air coming in, and just whatever's happening with the weather patterns. I'm not a fucking scientist, but we're walking through the trees, and there's just lightning landing on either side of us as we're going up the trail, and we're like, holy fuck, is this a good idea? Because I know at the top of this mountain, it's basically a long ridge if you want to get to the viewpoint, and yeah, it's just stuff like that. It's like you realize how you're not so invincible when you're going up against elements like that. You were talking about your crazy lightning story, and how I think one of your buddies had a shoe blown off or something like that.
Yeah, I actually talked to him after the Rogan podcast to confirm I didn't screw up the story, and it didn't blow his toe off. It just blew a hole through, or his end of his boot off, but it blew a hole through his boot where the exit was of the lightning, and their clothing was burnt, and he had a huge scar on his back where the entry came in.
Crazy.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah, super crazy. And I've gotten to the point now, I just get in the tent and hope for the best. I've been through some lightning storms. People are like, oh, Billy Badass. And it's like, no, you asked me what I do, and I've been in enough of them now. I'm not going to outrun it, so I might as well listen to an audiobook and pretend like it's not happening. Maybe film a little bit of it if it makes good film.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where if it's going to hit me, it's going to hit me. I have no control of when this lands, and if it does hit me, it's probably going to kill me. So I chose to be out here. I'm just going to ride this one out.
Yeah, that's kind of basically the position I've been with lightning for several years now, is just hope for the best. So.
Yeah. Do you guys do all your own filming, like you and just your small crew of guys that go out there?
Yeah, although we're going to have to stop that soon because people keep complaining they want to see more video footage, but we just do some redneck footage with a camera. I mean, we have a really nice camera that we never use because it's heavy to pack, but I actually just ordered Frank and I some more like a handy cam, like a 4K smaller camera, because Frank and I are going solo a lot this year, so try to, at least film every day what's going on, get as much footage as we can, and then, teach people obviously as much as we can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I imagine it would be difficult to shoot a hunt like that too, because you got to have guys that go out there that are able to do the hunt and participate in the hiking and packing and all that kind of stuff. Like, they have to be just as involved as you are, just to be able to get someone to get out there to film.
Trust them too, that they're not going to rat out your spot. That's another big problem.
Oh, is it? Yeah. Do you find that like with it's kind of funny because we were talking about this. It just reminded me, but the difference between kind of like public land and private land. Why is there such a thing, and kind of almost like, I guess, an arrogance about like people who hunt private land or people who hunt public land versus private land?
Yeah, it's usually easier on private. So, that's some of it's jealousy. I mean, it's truthful. I mean, I had somebody message me, you're going to hunt whitetail on public land next year to prove the naysayers wrong that you can shoot all the whitetails on public that you did on private. And I'm like, hell no, because I can't. I mean, I never would want to even pretend like I could. But, some people don't have the opportunity to hunt private, so there's some animosity there. And, it's not, it's just easier, you want to hunt the unbothered, hunt the untouched. And on private land, the animals aren't harassed as much, so it's harder on public land. And then people kind of hang a badge of honor on the public land thing. So I don't really give a shit. I hunt all of it. I just like to hunt. So I try to do at least 4 or 5 full-on non-private land, public land OTC hunts a year. And then some hunts you go on, it just has to be legal to have a guide, like in Canada. So, you deal with what you got to deal with, to make the hunt work. But there's definitely a badge of honor that people hang on their chest for the OTC thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's funny too, because it's like, I can guarantee most of the people that are talking shit, if someone was like, hey, especially if they couldn't afford to do it themselves, do you want to come and hunt on private land? I highly doubt any of them are going to say no if the opportunity came up.
Yeah, it's jealousy for the most part, but I don't. anymore. A few years ago, I probably didn't have as thick a skin as I do now, but a lot of the places I work, they try to hire or hunt. They'll try to hire me as a guide, and I don't feel. I guess I'm confident enough in my ability and skill set that I don't let it bug me too much. And it's just human nature. People are gonna bitch, and there's no way around that, or find something to whine about. So it is what it is, and I don't let it bother me too much.
Yeah, people always like to. Anytime you have any kind of success in anything you do, people always trying to find a reason why you don't deserve it, which is kind of funny. Yeah. But kind of before we go, I wanted to ask you if there's anything kind of new and exciting going on that people should know about with you and Kifaru, and anything new that's going to be kind of coming out that they should watch for.
Man, I can't say too much, but obviously the biggest, newest thing is my buddy Chad and I are buying the company. So that's a big one. And we're going to, really work on shorter lead times where we're shipping out inside of a week. We are expanding on the entire line. We're going to get into a lot of different things, but as far as new products, we've come out with so many. The next new products are going to be January of 2021. We can't keep up. Well, I say that the 357 Magnum's a new kind of larger day pack that's coming out in a couple weeks or less. But the biggest thing, honestly, is the purchase of the company. That's been exciting, and Patrick seemed to be pretty happy. He was handing it down to me, as well as Chad and BJ. It's just the streamlined operation of the company to get packs. The QC stays the same and everything else, but to hire enough manpower to actually just get packs to people in a quicker amount of time. And then shows, I'm trying to go a lot more shows just so people can see the product, get them fitted, things like that. But as far as new actual products, other than the 357 Mag, it'll be 2021. They're going to be bigger, more backpacking, sheep hunting type packs.
Right. Cool. Yeah. And just for anyone that doesn't already follow your stuff, I'm sure a lot of people already do, but how can they find you, and as well as find Kifaru online if they want to see what you're doing, kind of stay up to date with all of your hunting posts and any of the new stuff that's going to be coming out with Kifaru in the next kind of 6 months? How can they find you online?
So the website for Kifaru is kifaru.net. And then my Instagram page is Aron_Snyder. My Facebook's Aron Snyder. The Kifarucast is our podcast, and it's KIFARUCAST. That's on Podbean and Stitcher and iTunes and Spotify and shit like that. So those are the big ones. Kifaru. So KIFARU_INTL is Instagram. So we're all over, but the podcast is a big one for people to learn from and then also learn about Kifaru, but also learn about everything. So
awesome. Well, I just want to say thanks again for you coming on to the podcast, sharing all of these really cool stories and talking about bow hunting with me. And I think people are going to really enjoy this, and it's a great opportunity for people to hear from a seasoned hunter to actually get a better idea of what that lifestyle is all about, and maybe educate some people. So, thanks again for coming on to the podcast, man.
Yeah, no problem at all. Anytime. And next time I'll try not to have such a screwed up schedule.
No problem at all. Thanks for listening to this episode of Barbaric Wisdom. I'm Bronson Lee Norton. If you've been enjoying the podcast so far, be sure to subscribe to stay updated on the latest episodes. If you would like to show your support and help us continue to be able to bring your favorite guests onto the show, head on over to www.patreon.com/barbaricwisdom. That's www.patreon.com/barbaricwisdom.